Welcome to My One Amazing Life. This is the introduction video. Have you ever opened your Facebook or your email and there it was? A quote or sentence that resonated deep inside of you. Someone else posted it, yet you know it was meant for you. Sometimes it's a photo or an idea that resonates. It hits a chord deep inside. It reaches your soul. Over the last 3 years, I've collected quite a few of these. They meant something to me. They connected with my spirit. In a way, they told the story of my journey. Each quote complete in itself. Each quote a picture of my mindset at that moment. Together, they give glimpses into the journey that I was on while I wrote my One Amazing Life. This book initially was written for an audience of one, me. Each lesson, a step I took in rebuilding my life, my one amazing life. The first chapter in the book describes my husband Bob's stroke, his struggle to heal, his death 3 months later, and my emotional breakdown. I had so many questions that were left unanswered. Why Bob? Why so young? Why couldn't the doctors help him? Guilt overwhelmed me. Could I have made his life better? Could I have shown him more love? Could I have encouraged him more or been more patient? Could I have found a doctor who could have healed him? Bob could barely communicate. He had no sensation in his right side and was unable to move by himself. He had complications from the second stroke that had happened while he was in the hospital. It left him unable to follow verbal commands, to see properly, or to do anything for himself. With his extended stay in the hospital, he caught a virus that wreaked havoc on his already compromised immune system. There were still blood clots in his heart, as well as one in the vein in his leg. We fed him when he ate. He wasn't often hungry or thirsty, as the part of the brain that monitored thirst or hunger no longer worked properly. Bob rarely wanted to eat. Bob surprised us when he spoke his first words. One, water. The doctors didn't think he would ever speak again, but Bob proved them wrong. I was so optimistic that he would keep improving. I researched having help come into the house to help him recover, so that when Bob was stable enough to come home, he would be in good hands. But Bob wasn't getting better. He was getting worse. He wasn't eating enough to sustain him, and when he did, the virus would make him ill again. I remember clearly the day the doctor had a conversation with me about continuing to keep Bob alive with all the drugs and treatments. He wanted me to make a decision. He wanted to know if this was the life that Bob wanted to live. A life with no hope of improvement, insight, and continued complications. I could not make this decision alone. I gathered the family together. We walked outside to a park next to the hospital, and we sat on a bench and talked. Even knowing Bob never wanted to live totally dependent upon others, to allow Bob to die was a difficult decision. We all loved him. Once the decision was made, 2 of his close friends, who were there for both of us during this past 3 months, desperately attempted to have me rethink that decision and to keep Bob alive so that perhaps in the future a medical solution might give him back his independence. My emotions were on complete overload. I couldn't move or talk that night. That night I curled up in a fetal position on my bed. My daughter Melissa crawled in beside me and just held me close. I wanted answers, or at least some guidance from the spirit world that I was doing the right thing for Bob. I was so sure that I would see or hear something that would give me comfort when Bob was dying. My best friend told me spirits were there and that Bob had guidance, but I desperately wanted to see for myself. I wanted to know he was safe. I wanted to have certainty, other than through spiritual faith, that he was being helped. I saw nothing. Bob died with one of his most favorite people by his side, his sister-in-law. I had left briefly as he was resting comfortably. He chose to die then, which only created more emotional turmoil for me. I wasn't there to say goodbye. When someone passes away, there are so many things that must be done. During this time, I felt like a robot, going through the motions and making decisions. I wanted to do the very best for Bob. I wanted to make the very best decisions for him. Thank goodness there were others to lean on. So many people were always around. They helped with all the arrangements, his wake, and so on. Bob and I were so blessed, as everything was so beautiful. On a side note, something interesting happened on the night that Bob passed away, and then again on the evening of his wake. Our carbon monoxide alarms went off every half hour all night, continually waking everyone up. In all of 18 years we'd lived in the house, they'd never done this before. Or since. I still wonder if perhaps the spirit world was telling me Bob was safe and okay. My life returned to a new normal. My son Michael stayed at the house to help with everything and to make sure I was okay. I couldn't seem to shake this haze that encompassed me. Life became a blur. I wanted to escape. I wanted to run away from these emotions that ran my life. There seemed no escape. I was incapable of turning off the waves of sadness that would sometimes engulf me. In the middle of a grocery store, tears would start to roll down my cheeks. Initially, I was incapable of going back to work, or even of holding a conversation where there might be some conflict. I felt numb. I would forget things. Most importantly, I no longer knew what I believed in. I was stuck. Life seemed cold and cruel. I felt alone even when surrounded by people. I wanted this pain to stop, and I was emotionally trapped in its claws. I knew my life would never be the same. I knew that I needed to heal. I knew that the only way to heal would be to revisit the principles that I had built my life on. And that is what led me to write my 1Amazing Life. I examined my life to date, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I forgave myself. I began the process to rebuild my life, one day at a time. Over the next year, I had lots of struggles. I learned emotional healing takes time, and it's okay not to always be in control of your emotions. The people I cared and loved understood. I knew healing would take time. I learned patience, and I learned to just love me. I learned that I'm vulnerable and that I'm strong. Strong enough to build a life to my highest potential. Initially, I did it for Bob. He would have expected me to pull myself together. I did it for my children. I wanted them to excel at their lives, and I wanted to be a role model. Finally, I recognized I was doing it for myself and my future. I spent day and night working on this process. I recognized as the months passed, I was stronger and I was committed to do whatever it took to move forward and to create my 1Amazing Life. This introduction to my 1Amazing Life is presented to you. The balance of the book will be presented in a series of videos with their accompanying exercises to download off my 1Amazing Life Facebook page, as well as our YouTube channel. Please pay it forward by sharing them with your friends and family. I hope that you too will take on the journey to live to your potential and to live your one most amazing life possible.